time to welcome my next guest into the studio. Delighted to say I'm joined by the singer-songwriter Patrick Duff. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, nice to see you, Steve.
Thank you for coming in. Now, Patrick has produced a new album called Another Word for Rose. He is one of the UK's most intriguing and compelling singer-songwriters. He published his autobiography, you might recall, called Singer in 2022, and he came in and had a chat about that a couple of years ago. Thank you once again for coming in, Patrick.
Thank you.
Let's just remind people a little bit about your background. Where are you from originally? Where were you actually born?
I was born in Bristol.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you started out sort of music-wise, at least it kicked off you as a street busker.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
When you were busking then, were you doing your own stuff or cover
I was
versions?
doing my own stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just making stuff up on the spur of the moment. My dad had taught me 3 chords, C, F and G7. All his songs, he was kind of Irish. All his songs were on those chords.
Yeah.
And he taught me those 3 chords, and I pretty quickly started busking and just making up stuff while I was there. Sky songs, I used to call them, because they seemed to come from the surroundings. I was just singing about what I could see.
Now, I've done busking years ago, and we used to do just popular, tunes of the day, and that was tough enough. But when you've got to break that barrier of the people not knowing your songs at all, how hard was it?
Well, if you're singing about somebody who's actually going past you, it's a good way of getting their attention.
Oh, so you changed the lyrics to engage with them?
Well, I was making it up on the spur of the moment. So I would actually be singing about the person coming past, or the weather, or the mood of the place, or, whatever I could see. So I was including the people in my songs. So that got their attention. Some people liked it and some people ignored you, like it was the same as being in the music business.
I'll tell you, a lot tougher these days with nobody carrying any cash with them.
Yeah, that's true.
Blimey O'Reilly.
I don't have to do it anymore, yeah.
Well, famously, you became the front man of the band Strange Love, described as a charismatic front man. And of course, you enjoyed success with them. It was a bit of a mad whirl, though, wasn't it?
In some ways, it was, yeah. It was.
Who did you get signed to initially, then?
Well, it was basically EMI, but it was through Food Records.
Yes.
It was, there was 2 guys called Dave Balfe and Andy Ross. They signed us, after 6 gigs.
How long was Strange Love actually together for as a band?
The whole thing was just under a decade, as far as I remember.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And you must have had some wonderful highlights. I mean, just looking back at it, was there a few moments where you were pinching yourself, thinking, blimey, how did I end up here?
I mean, on the main stage at Glastonbury, that was an amazing experience. Yeah. And recording in Abbey Road, actually, because I loved the Beatles, and so did Alex, who was one of the guitarists in the band. We both loved them. We used to listen to the Beatles when we first started the band, and then we were in the room where they recorded it all. And it was a really amazing, quite almost spooky to be in there, actually, I'd say.
I know you weren't a boy band, but you were boys in a band. And I've been reading about this documentary that's just been made about boy bands, and the way that they are basically a product of the record company. And though it sounds very glamorous and fun, they work you hard, don't they?
Well, I think we were slightly different. The record company never really made us do anything we didn't want to do. They were really good to us. They basically supported us.
They gave you a weekly salary then, did they?
Oh, yeah.
And did you have to pay any of that back ultimately, or did
no.
you? So you enjoyed the largesse then of the companies at a time when they actually had a bit of money.
Yeah, and they would support bands, and it was a good time for music in the 90s. Well, it's always a good time for music, but it was a good time to be a musician, because if you got signed, you were supported by your label, and we certainly were. So it was great.
The industry has changed enormously since then. You, of course, played around this country. Where abroad did you play in Strange Love?
All over Europe, really, yeah.
What was that like? It must have been really exciting turning up at a new town.
I think it was really interesting to be able to feel, because you got on a sleeper bus, basically, and you drove from you'd go to sleep in Oslo, and you'd wake up the next day in Stockholm, and then you'd wake up the next day in Denmark, and then the next day. So you'd be able to feel, I could definitely feel the difference in the audiences in the different countries, how that felt. It was really, really made an impression on me. So playing a gig in Italy, or Spain, there's sort of electricity in the air. In Germany, there was a more pensive thing. They sound like cliches, but you really did notice it.
More pressure on you, though, as the lead singer, because all eyes are on you. I mean, when you go and see a band, naturally, you look at the lead singer, don't you? Did you feel more pressure, do you think, than other band members?
I don't know, because I don't know what pressure they felt. I felt pressure before going on stage. I think that's a nerve-wracking time. But once you get up there, you're singing and you're playing the music that you love, and it just takes you. So you don't really feel nervous once you're on stage, unless something goes wrong. And in rock and roll, things going wrong can sometimes be the best thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah, and I imagine...
So I didn't feel nervous actually on the stage.
Walking off stage after a great concert, wherever it may be, that must be a euphoric experience.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
How long does that last for?
It lasts a long time, a few days probably. But if you're on a tour, then you're getting the same thing the next day, because they usually book them one after the other. So by the end of that, you go a bit mad. I think everyone does.
Were there ever times where you'd played a great concert in Europe or whatever, to a sold-out crowd, and then you'd walk down the street the next day and nobody would know who you were, and they wouldn't have known the sort of juxtaposition between being...
Yeah, I think that did happen, yeah. But that never bothered me.
Now, the Strange Love themselves disbanded, I think, 1998. You, of course, became a solo artist, and since then you've explored a wide range of styles and genres. I've got a quote here. I don't know who this is from. At the core of his work, Patrick's work, of course, lies an unwavering commitment to crafting deeply personal love songs born from a heart that has been, in his own words, broken by the world. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, on this latest album, I'll just speak about that, because then my songwriting process has developed so much over the years. We'd be here all day. But I mean, if I talk about the record that I've just written, a lot of the songs came around the time I was writing my book. So I was putting quite a lot of effort into that. But then occasionally I would get just a feeling inside, like, you need to go and pick up your guitar now. And most of the songs on this album came this way. I would pick up my guitar and I would just play out the whole song in one go from nowhere, not having done any work on it whatsoever. So the songs wrote themselves completely inside me, if you know what I mean. And the first thing I knew about them was I was actually playing them out like into the air straight away. And then I would just, oh my goodness. And then I would just record them on my phone. So that's how they came on this record. So I think that's probably something to do with a lifetime of songwriting, and also the fact that I was working on my book. So my attention was turned away from songwriting in a way at that point. But the songwriting was continuing on inside me despite that, if you see what I'm trying to say.
Well,
that was really interesting.
I have heard of that before with other artists. I remember Paul Weller saying he wrote That's Entertainment. It just exactly as you've outlined there. And of course, famously, Coleridge writing Kubla Khan in Xanadu, and he was writing this wonderful poem, and then there's a knock at the front door, and he was interrupted. When you're in that stream, that flow, you don't want to be interrupted, do you?
No, you definitely don't.
Blimey O'Reilly. Now, you do approach each new project with a different way of doing it because of who you're collaborating with, and you've got some great people on this album, haven't you? And I know that you felt that this album needed a more expansive sound and a sort of fuller arrangement. So who did you get involved with it?
Well, I'd met Neil Davidge, who was producing for Massive Attack. He made a solo album a few years ago, and he invited me down to go and do some vocals on that. And when I went down to the studio, there was somebody there, a guy from Denver called Drew Morgan. He's got a big orange beard and loads of orange hair.
He's from Denver, isn't he?
He's from Denver, yeah. And he's... we just hit it off straight away. And I kept in touch with him over the years, and I always... it's sort of like I had him there in the back of my mind. I would really like to work with that guy. And when I wrote these songs, the way they'd come about had been so mysterious, and they were also quite feeling songs, if you know what I mean. Like my previous work, the songs have been quite narrative. They've been stories. They've had characters in them. They stand up alone when you play them on an acoustic guitar really well. But this new stuff was much more emotional and feeling, almost cinematic. So I knew he was a string arranger. So I just got in touch with him and said, do you want to work on a record? And yeah, he did want to. So we went to Wales. We booked a studio in Wales. It was about 3 miles from where all my relatives, from my mum's side of the family, my mum's Welsh, they're all buried in these like graveyards around this studio. So that was why I chose the place. And we went there, and along with Guy Metcalf, who's a drummer in a band called Thought Forms, who are a Bristol band, and Woody Taylor, who's a young guitar player who I've been working with for a few years.
He is young, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 21, and I taught him from the age of 14, and we always had a great connection. So I play music with him now. So yeah, those were the 4 people, and then Jim Barr, who you're bound to know from Bristol, he also came in later and played some bass for us.
It must be lovely to have those string arrangements by Drew, though, because it just adds an extra element of lusciousness to it, doesn't
Absolutely,
it?
Absolutely, yeah, amazing.
Now, tell me a bit about the songs on the album. You've had a couple of singles out so far, described as quite introspective, personal, looking at deep emotions of yours. Do they all share that sort of theme?
Well, because they came from that in that spontaneous way, they are. They're a sort of mystery to me as well, these songs.
Do you feel like they're really yours, or you're just a conduit for them?
Well, they feel like they belong to us all now, because we all... Like, one thing I really wanted to achieve on this record was I wanted to create space for the people who worked on it to bring what they have to give. If you're too dictatorial as a songwriter, I think you can block off other people being able to contribute. If you've got really, really strong ideas about what you want, I just wanted to create a sort of atmosphere. I mean, I got on really well with all these people already, and I just wanted to create an atmosphere where we could all bring all our talents and sort of mix them together in a big cauldron. And that's what's happened. It's one of the reasons why I think it's a great record.
Well, you played a couple of intimate gigs at Rough Trade in London and in Bristol to launch the album, and you also performed in Germany and also the Delphi Theatre. That must have been an amazing experience in Berlin.
It was incredible, that place. It took my breath away when I walked in there. It's an old silent movie theatre in Germany, in Berlin. Lots and lots and lots of famous people have played there, and it's maintained this very still, deep atmosphere. You could, I mean, even when there was nobody in there, you went in there. It was just like, wow, there's something in here already before you've even started playing. And I've got a German manager at the moment, so I've been spending a lot of time in Berlin. I really like it over there, and we've had some great promotion on the radio over there as well. We've been on Radio 1, German radio, and on a thing called By FM, which is a big radio station over there as well. So it's been great.
I see that you are playing locally in the new year. You've got a gig 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day, at that lovely venue, the Mount Without, which is at the bottom of St Michael's Hill.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The converted church. Yeah. It's just such a great venue, and some really interesting events take place there. Yeah. So put that in your diary. That's Patrick Duff on the 13th of February at the Mount Without, St Michael's Hill. I see the album is available in all the conventional ways, but also in white vinyl and on cassette.
Yeah.
That's a hark back, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, somebody said that cassettes are back in. People are always saying things like that, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I can remember listening to things on cassette. And I remember taping Top of the Pops, like a lot of people say.
I got loads of
our
cassettes.
Generation. And we taped Top of the Pops, didn't we, off the radio on cassette. So, yeah, it's great to have the record on a cassette. Yeah.
Well, the album itself is called Another Word for Rose. Forgive me, I'm not sure what the label is.
It's called Volière.
Volière.
Yeah.
So Volière is the label. The album is called Another Word for Rose. You can find out more about Patrick at his own website, patrickduff.net. You can see him live in concert on the 13th of February at the Mount Without, St Michael's Hill. That's going to be a very special concert, I'm sure. I'm going to finish up with your single Once, which is a very honest lyric. Just tell me a bit about this particular tune.
It's sort of mixture, I think, because of the way it came out of me, but I think it's basically a mixture between a kind of difficulty in a relationship, life being a musician, and how that particular lifestyle can actually make relationships difficult sometimes, and also money. And those three things and how they mix together and how they create. So I think that's what that song's about.
Well, lovely to see you again, Patrick. Good luck with the album.
Pleasure.
That is the local singer-songwriter Patrick Duff. His brand new album is called Another Word for Rose. And you can see him live at the Mount Without, St Michael's Hill, 13th of February. More details at patrickduff.net. And from the album, here's one of the singles. This is Once.